dates. We're missing dates.
Like, get the out of my face.
Hello, New York! Hello, New York!
Love Island is doing a lot of things for a lot of people. For some, it's entertaining. For others, it is frustrating. And for the majority of us, whether we know it consciously or not, this season of Love Island is a mirror to the current Gen Z dating landscape. And also, friendship landscape. And it's time we talk about it. Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. Today we are back and today we're talking about Love Island. And more so, dating. Because season 7 of Love Island has been dominating internet discourse, no pun intended, for just about a month now, and so many different think pieces have spawned, good, bad, ugly, and the likes about this show. Because for one, I think that most reality shows are just a human sociology experiment, but this season especially because there are just so many layers to unpack. Now, this is by no means a season review. We're more so talking about Love Island and the themes and controversies of Love Island to help us have a better understanding as to like what has been going on in the Gen Z dating scene. We've talked about dating in Gen Z in prior videos as more of like a general feeler for what's been going on in society. This video is meant to tackle some of the most prominent things that we're seeing that are the biggest pain points in dating and young people that we see that are being put on full display on our televisions every single day on Love Island, showing us in real time why things like nonchalance, being non-committal, as well as how things like identity stealthing and the overuse and sometimes weaponization of being a girl's girl all impact the way that we're seeing people on Love Island date, and why this season is one of the most loveless seasons, as well as how it's impacting us outside the villa in the real world, making Gen Z one of the most loveless generations. This is for sure going to be an interesting one, so be sure to buckle up because it's time to get into it. Okay, so let's just set a level of understanding here, because I did ask my subscribers whether or not they're actually tuned into Love Island, and the majority of y'all said no and had no plans of watching. Ouch. Okay, target audience not reached. So for those of you that are out of the loop, there's this reality show. Yes, I know, I just heard the collective groan, hear me out. There's this reality show called Love Island, which is basically what you get when you put a bunch of really hot, chronically online 20-somethings all on an island without any form of connection to the real world, make them partake in a series of potentially biohazardous humiliation rituals. I mean, challenges. Put cameras in their face and say, go at it. Now you may be asking yourself, wait, I thought this was called Love Island. Where's the love part? And that is a perfectly fine and intelligent question. Us Love Island watchers have been wondering the same thing all season. Now, like I said, this is the 7th season of Love Island USA. UK has a ton of seasons, but as for the US, this is the 7th season, but only the 2nd season of Love Island USA that features a mostly Gen Z cast, and maybe potentially the first entirely Gen Z cast. And this is made very obvious given how many TikTok references and meme references that are made throughout this season, and just in their regular conversations.
Yeah, I like your laugh.
It sounds like something she'd say. I like that laugh.
Hello, New York! Hello, New York!
This season's original cast ages range from around 21 to 27, but now with some of the more recent bombshells, it's up to around like 29. But again, majority Gen Z. And to not be like generationally specific, but like to everyone's surprise, 18 to 24-year-olders right now are kind of considered Gen Z 2.0, but I'm sure like no 24-year-old actually knows this and is aware of this. But to each their own, articles don't write themselves. We've actually talked about this divide in Gen Z in a previous video. You should have to go check that out. And from that video, we learned that there are two Gen Zs, at least politically. Gen Z 2.0 is largely defined as people that experienced the pandemic during high school. And for reasons that we've dug into before, this group of people tends to lean a little bit more conservative and is more so right-leaning and aspiring for the traditional life than the older half of Gen Z. And this isn't to say that the younger Islanders are conservative. I don't know that, but it's interesting to see what they value and what the ideology and language of that is. Like for people like Ace and Bella, who were some of the younger Islanders this season, they both talked around the concept of being high value, whether that be a high value woman or a high value man, which as we often know is terminology used in red pill content, whether that be for men or women. There's also a lot of talk this season about the traditional life, whether that be like the traditional wife or husband, coming from all parties, which is crazy because how are y'all talking about wife and husband when y'all can barely find a strong connection? Let's talk about that. facts. Like Ace, one of the more prominent people on this season, has had that conversation with at least 2 people already. I'm already thinking of Iris and Coco just off the dome, talking about how they agree that they're not just dating to date, they are in fact dating to marry, which is something that a lot of people tend to say. I'm not here to say that just because you out here trying to date to marry don't mean that you're like on some kind of pipeline. No, it's just the fact that they are on the younger side. And based on what they've said in the show, they have not had a lot of dating experience, or at least serious dating experience. So it just feels a little wild to put that pressure on whoever they're planning on dating, being like, yeah, I know I met you 5 days ago in the villa, but I'm looking for this to be endgame. But this whole conversation leads into something we're going to get into later in the video. When it comes to men, both in real life and on the show, claiming to want the traditional nuclear family, but not being traditional themselves or acting any way of the sort. And I think that this is really interesting just because I feel like with older Gen Z and millennials, there are a lot of other ideas around like family dynamics that aren't necessarily as traditional. And of course, I have another video talking about that. And obviously, when I say these things, I'm not speaking like monolithically because most things are a case by case basis. But it seems, at least anecdotally, a lot of older Gen Z and millennials are beginning to see new forms of family and community. Whereas it's seeming that for the younger half of Gen Z, things are trending towards wanting more traditional structures.
I've been thinking a lot about the red pill language that's been used on this season of Love Island. I've made a couple videos about how Bella, rest in peace, in particular, has been one to use it, calling herself a high-value woman, which is pulled straight from the manosphere hierarchy that says high-value people are superior to low-value people because they have traits that make them so, like being hot, having a good job, better morals.
Taking a little step away from the Gen Z dating correlation with Love Island, and more so just around like how Gen Z as a culture has been changing not only reality TV, but more specifically this season of Love Island, and is something that people have been talking about a lot online as a factor that's been ruining this season of Love Island, is the hyper awareness that they're being filmed. As a generation, we've grown up in front of the camera and on social media. And it's very much so apparent in this cast. Like the Islanders seem hyper aware, even more so this season than in previous ones, that they're being watched and they either play into it or reference it. Like our generation has been living in the digital panopticon, and it makes sense. We're the first generation to live our formative years online, on our phones, and on social media, meaning that we've always had the watchful imaginary eye on us, in our heads, and on our screens. Like the amount of times that Islanders reference America and analyze our choices to then go ahead and make decisions, making the show feel more like a gameplay and more so like Big Brother than actually Love Island. And like it almost feels like this cast is hyper aware that they're on a show and aren't actually participating in the show to abide by what the show is meant to be, and is instead fixated on replicating everything that went down in season 6 and what the winners of season 6 ended up reaping. But you see, the problem here is that what made season 6 of Love Island such a hit and launched all the winners, like the top 3 winners, into superstardom and all the money and connections and all that, is that they're doing what the show actually required of them and actually did find love in a seemingly genuine way. They're being fun, they're being messy, they're being flirty and exploring because it's Love Island, not Strategy Island. Like this season feels like the Islanders are intentionally trying to create moments and emulate what they think the public wants to see, with a specific outcome in mind. Now let's get back into the dating, because that's what we came here for. And one of the main things that I've seen be a major hindrance in a lot of the cast's actual pairings and finding love, as well as one of the main hindrances in real life and Gen Z dating, is the general non-committal nature of the cast and Gen Z. If you've been a Love Island historian, you'd know that no other season has been this non-committal. Like, yes, there's a thing called Casa Amor where the original pairings of people on Love Island go off and are tempted to pair up with a whole different set of bombshells all living in what's called Casa Amor around halfway through the season. But usually that's done to test the strength of the original connections that the Islanders had to see whether or not they're down to actually fully commit or whether or not they're just playing around and looking for something better. But what we saw with Casa Amor this season is that it felt more like a lifeline for the Islanders currently on the villa because no one was committing to each other. At that point, there had not been really any strong couples where both parties are choosing to commit to each other. And it felt like everyone was kind of banking on Casa Amor to bring in some fresh meat to potentially find someone to actually want to commit to, which hasn't really been the case in previous seasons, which is why they completely changed up how they did Casa Amor this season, because this year was just so strange. And I'd argue that a big reason for the lack of commitment is because of the fear of being closed off and committing. I mean, like, there are many different reasons why people didn't lock down and commit, because of the way that certain players are playing the game earlier in the season, aka Jeremiah and Huda, as well as Ace's role in it, both disincentivizing locking down with someone too early and promoting exploring, aka meaning dating as many people as possible without commitment until you know who you want to commit to. But as we saw the first half of the season play out, what happens when everyone's exploring, no one commits, and the people that get eliminated from the island are the people that actually do find a connection and want to commit? Well, it creates a batch of chronically single people on the show who seem like they want the prize money of 100K more than they actually want to be with each other. And we see this in real life too when it comes to dating in Gen Z. Not to beat a dead horse, because everyone's talked about this when it comes to Gen Z dating, but like the whole advent of dating apps, having so many options, exploring so many options, and not really committing to one or taking one serious because the grass is always greener. There are always more options until, you know, there aren't. But let's go a little bit deeper and talk more specifically about like what are dating trends that we've seen happen in real life that are playing out in this show. And one of those being, and the title of this section is a question, why are the men so conservative and nonchalant?
Is this very weird, emotionally stunted season of Love Island due to the intimacy crisis and people retreating from dating?
As the little internet researchers we are, we of course found reposts, old tweets, old stories, the likes, the followings of not just all the men, but also all the ladies on the show. And on the male side, why does it seem like all the men have been at some point red-pilled or are on some level repeating conservative ideologies? Like, you have people like Austin reposting things to do with Trump, things that are anti-Kamala. You have one of the Islanders, TJ, following Andrew Tate. Then on the girls' side, you literally have two girls that got kicked off for saying something racist. Like, what is going on with this cast? When it comes to how this is played out in the show, more specifically to the feelings of like nonchalance, is like for the entire first half of the show, all of the guys really played it cool. They played it very cool. They played it very nonchalant, if you will. Not really expressing to the girls too much how they felt, being a little distant, being a little coy, and not really showing as much romance to the girls, not necessarily grafting as is typical for Love Island. Like, grafting and the concept of grafting was like such a integral part of Love Island that it became part of like the Love Island lexicon. And we've seen this notion of grafting more so with Ace in the later half of the season, where he's going out of his way to plan these breakfasts and these dates and stuff for Shelly. But in prior seasons, it used to just be more widespread and just more. It was putting effort to gain someone's attention, flirting, planning little dates, being intentional and thoughtful about the dates. But instead, we get this season are things like this.
Scooping and pushing. Boom.
And I know I mentioned Ace as being one example of like decent grafting, but he's also a perpetrator of like the nonchalance, because he definitely did earlier in the season come up to Shelly and be like, how are you going to fit in my life? What are you going to do to try and pursue me? To which Shelly replied something on the lines of, you're chasing me. And we've seen it with a lot of the other guys too. You have people like Austin not really wanting to put in the work to pursue Shelly. And instead, when he's seeing Ace pursue Shelly, he's like, oh, I don't want to be in a love triangle, while not putting in much effort himself. Then you have people like Taylor and Nick who kind of come across as kind of like aloof and not necessarily that they're super into their person, that being Alandria and at the time Sierra, in the first half of the show. So yeah, it's just like this pattern of nonchalance that we see so often in the real world, which is really hurting the romance on the show, but also in real life. There is this like notion of like not caring and nonchalance and sort of avoidance and detachment that is so prevalent in the Gen Z dating scene, like not wanting to show all your cards, not wanting to love openly, not wanting to fully be yourself too early in fear of getting hurt, in fear of being too vulnerable, or just in fear of doing too much, I guess. And this is kind of twofold, because I don't want to say that it's just a man thing. There also is a lot of pushback to chalance and really expressing oneself coming from the girl side as well. Like, we can't not mention the whole like who gonna be the boys, the sassy man apocalypse, and DL allegations against straight guys that either show that they're too comfortable in their sexuality or just generally too expressive. And I really hate to be on here defending the guys, because I'm here for the girlies and the gays, but it is a reality because it is not just a guy's thing. And actually, as a transition to that, let's kind of talk about what's going on the show and in real life when it comes to the girls, and specifically the girls. So recently on the show, the producers of Love Island created a new challenge called the Stand on Business Challenge, which is essentially Ask FM or Ask Me Anything in real life. People can write whatever question or statement they may have about you and choose whether or not they want to sign their name or not, which of course became quickly messy when tensions were high and people were already beefing with each other. But what started off with potentially messy intentions just ended up resulting in bullying. And we got to talk about one of the main people that were bullied in that episode, where it was Miss Amaya Papaya, the fan favorite of the season, essentially. And why I bring this up is because that episode and this season specifically, if you took a shot every time someone mentioned the term girl's girl, you would be rushed to the hospital for alcohol poisoning. Like, that term is just being thrown around willy-nilly. And it's unfortunate because the term initially had a sense and a purpose, but the way that it's kind of used now on the show and also sometimes on social media, that the term girl's girl gets turned into a weapon of the state, or at least a weapon of the villa, almost as a way of policing the girl's behavior in ways that definitely extend out the range of intended use. Now let's take a little backtrack and get into like what the initial meaning of girl's girl was. It came into the social and cultural zeitgeist around 2023, and it was meant to be a positive trait defining women who backed other women, never viewing them as competition but as allies. It's meant to subvert and be the counter to the mean girl or pick-me girl, being either just generally rude to women or being a male-centered woman. But as everything that gets reused to death by the internet peanut gallery, it seems that people have lost the plot as to what the term actually means. And now that it seems that online and on the show, that if a girl doesn't act in a way that you like or deem palatable, that you can always accuse them as being the worst possible thing they can be, not a girl's girl. And I hate to say this because this may be overstepping, but like, just because that girl is not your girl does not mean that she's not a girl's girl. And I don't say that to be crass or rude or anything, but we see, especially in the show, people overusing that term to police girls' behavior into acting a certain way or to acting in accordance to whatever group that person is a part of, because being a girl's girl is not the same in all situations. We're seeing this season that this phrase is being weaponized against girls for stepping on toes and maybe not being the most agreeable, which I mean isn't great, but like is the plot of the show. Like, yes, if your homegirl starts talking to a guy she knows you like, that would be sus in the real world, but on Love Island, that's like the whole point. You only know each other for a few days, and like that's the name of the game, I fear. And in the case of the show, like, that precedent was also set by Huda and Jeremiah, where Huda would come after any girl that'll even look Jeremiah's way, calling them outside their name, calling them not a girl's girl, and essentially damning them to hell. And like, the thing about this whole girl's girl thing is that it's never actually used in practice when it should count. Like, yeah, it's used against the girls whenever one girl does something that another girl doesn't like, but like, where are the not a girl's girl arguments coming where Maya's getting bullied by 3 of her ex connections and none of the girls stand up for her? And when she rightfully so breaks down afterwards, it takes so long for the girls to actually go and comfort her from that. Like, we've seen in past seasons, girls actually stick up for each other when the guys are tripping or doing too much. Like, think of Janae's iconic line, "What did I say about arguing with women?" Like, it's a sense of like performative girl's girlness, when in reality, at least in the show, it's not actually about uplifting and supporting other women. It's about making sure that the other girls don't get in your way or piss you off. And I guess to close off here with all that said, I fear that a lot of these criticisms about Love Island and about how things are playing out in the dating sphere on Love Island aren't exclusive to the villa. They don't just apply to the islanders. In fact, I'd say that they apply to the general dating sphere as a whole, because we're seeing these trends in person, and I think that's why we're having such visceral reactions to them play out on the show, because we've seen these type of people before. We've seen these interactions before, and they're personally relatable, because what's happening on Love Island, of course to a more dramatized scale, is what's happening in a lot of the love lives of young people right now. And I've been seeing a lot of people online talk about how they need next season an entirely new cast, just bring in some new people, or would an entirely different cast around the same age group bring a different energy? Or is Love Island just a sign of the times where things like hypervigilance, the loss of authenticity, and the inability to form new authentic connections as easily? Well, God, I hope not.